Hi, and welcome to L&A Does Audio Stuff. Hey, today we're not in L&A studio. Today we are in Air Studios in London. Today we have a guest, Cicely Balston, who's a mastering engineer, and she's here to tell you everything you want to know about mastering. We're going to debunk all the mysteries around mastering. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell who you are?
I'm Cicely Balston. I'm a mastering engineer at Air Studios. I'm currently based at the site of Alchemy Mastering, which we're owned by Air Studios. I've been mastering since 2013, when I did a placement year from the degree that I was doing. And I graduated from that degree, went back to that mastering studio. It's a place called Gearbox Records in Tileyard Studios. Started working at Air in 2016. Apart from a brief 18-month period of being freelance, I've basically worked there ever since.
So you are just like, you are the master. You are like, that's what you've done. That's what you know. That's what you live and breathe.
That is exactly it. Yes.
So we have a right person here to ask all the questions. So basically, put out the question of what would you like to know about mastering? These are the questions you asked. The question number 1 is, what is mastering?
It's a great question. Good one to start on. Mastering is the kind of final quality control check process for released music. So it's about listening to something, listening to a mix, thinking, like, how can I make the listening experience for this piece of music as good as possible? Whether that's sonically, whether that's about it starting in the right place when you hit play, whether it's about putting a nice fade on the end, whatever it is, make it sound as good as possible for its intended release format.
And that's how simple it is. And that's the video, no.
Done. Oh, great.
Okay, so if track is mixed properly, does it need mastering?
So, I mean, I am a mastering engineer, so I'm obviously going to say yes to that. I think what that question is sort of getting at is, you know, what more needs doing if a mix is done? And it could be anything, basically. And I know that's an annoying it depends kind of answer.
Anyone who's followed my channel before knows that I say it depends a lot, but a bit like RuPaul says, you're born naked, rest is drag. Yeah. And that's why I said in this as well, we have audio science and everything else is opinion. Everything else is your expression and your perspective, right?
Yeah. And even, you know, the best mix, it's still nice to collaborate at the end with someone else who is listening purely to what's been made. And I'm thinking about the track in terms of what other tracks it might go up against on like a playlist, or what kind of genre it is getting towards, and is that the intention, and was that what the artist wanted? And there's all of that within just the one track. And then on top of that, you know, we don't just work on singles, we do EPs, we do albums. It's also about making sure the gaps are correct, making sure if you have a kind of big, full arrangement, that track sounds good, and the next track coming in is like a quiet piano ballad, that sounds like it's the right thing and it's at the right level. And then there's also the kind of technical side of mastering, so making sure it's the right format, which for streaming, you know, isn't such a big side of things. It's just making sure it's at a WAV, correct bit depth and things like that. But for vinyl, that's a big process, trying to get something ready for a vinyl release. Mastering encompasses, there's the kind of creative side, which is making it sound good, but there's also the kind of technical side of mastering.
And that kind of takes us to the next question. What different set of skills separate mastering engineer or a mixing engineer?
Interesting question. I think maybe in terms of skills, there's lots of similarities. So critical listening, knowing what you want to do with what you're hearing. So you're hearing something that's too bright and maybe you want to use an EQ to take it off, but maybe you want to add bass instead of taking off top end to achieve the same thing. I think it's the intention that's different. The mix is trying to get all the elements of a track together to make that track work as a piece of musical journey, as it were. And then mastering is about making sure it sounds good, making sure it's in the right format, making sure it sounds good with other things in mind. So it's kind of an objectivity that comes with mastering that is the kind of what we're bringing to the process, really.
I totally agree, because I mix quite a lot. And as a producer, it's almost like production is where you are the artist who takes the colors and put it in the canvas, where someone like mixing engineer is who actually makes sure that all of them fit together, like it's a one big whole thing.
Yeah.
Where mastering engineer is the fixative of the painting. You're
or the one that puts it up on the wall.
Exactly.
And,
or
it properly,
framer, like in a painting. So you do the framing. You have similar skills and you have similar tools, but you might use them for different purposes, as you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. At this point, I want to thank the sponsor of this series, DistroKid. They are amazing music distributor that I personally use every single time I publish music. And I did that just a couple months ago when I published my song, Give It Away. One of my favorite features from them is called Hyperfollow. It is basically a one-link stop, and it leads you to all the places where your music is available. So it has the Spotify link, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, every single one of those. You can customize the page as you want, so you can add videos, your picture, little text about yourself and the song. So when I published Give It Away, I love the fact that I can actually share the link before the song is even out, and that's how people can pre-save through this link my song. If they pre-save it, they will follow you automatically on Spotify. It's really good because what more followers you have on Spotify, the more likely you're going to get to the playlist as well. Also, pre-saving will remind them when the song is out. Overall, it's amazing because it gives you more stats to analyze, but also it gives you more listeners. DistroKid were also amazingly kind because they gave my followers all 7% off from your first subscription. So if you'd like to have this, go to the link down below and read more about DistroKid. Thank you, DistroKid, for always supporting my channel. Thank you. Love you. So, do you find there are perceptions or assumptions about the role of mastering engineer? Do you think these can affect how people value your work?
Yes, there definitely are perceptions and assumptions. So in the same day, I could have someone saying, why have you changed the mix so much? And then the next person saying, why doesn't it sound more different from the mix? Like, you just have to sort of tread the line between them. Different people expect a different amount of change from the mix. And you can never know in advance necessarily which one they are.
And do you think if there's a musician who's not done a lot of active listening, do you think that affects also how they perceive your work then?
Yeah, sometimes. You know, we've all had situations where people don't like how it's sounding, and it's partly because they're so tied to how it used to sound. It's got around by forming the relationship and making sure that you are listening to what people want and knowing when to say, well, actually, I think this isn't working. You know, if you've got on to version 50, maybe you need something else, or maybe you need someone else, and maybe this is not, you know, you've sort of lost perspective. So
it's a lot about the communication with the person and the artist so that you have the same vision. But it's the same as like with mixing or production or whatever you're doing. Like, so what can I expect as a musician to be expected from me working with a mastering engineer? So what sort of paperwork, preparation, organization and musician do to make the job of the engineer easier? What's your dream client? What does it look like? Dream client comes to you and what do they have?
That's such a great question. I don't really know how to answer that without sounding like people that don't do that aren't my dream client.
This question is more like people want practical answers now.
Sure.
They want what do they give to you so that they can be your dream client?
Well, a minimum 24-bit file, 32-bit float if they want.
There's a lot of questions about that. Do you find that professional, or do you think that gain staging is really important before that it's done?
It's good if it's done nicely beforehand.
But what we are talking here is that there's a 32-bit
floating point, yeah.
That thing. If that's sent to a mastering engineer, it basically means that the final track can't really clip at all. So it can be turned down without clipping. Where if you do it just like 24-bit and you're not done gain staging, it can clip. If it will be pain in the ass and it's not going to be able to, master it properly.
Yes, but I think the amount of times that I can't master something properly is quite rare because things are clipping. People don't tend to be sending things that are. And I think the importance of gain staging is to think about how much level needs to be added in order for something to come up to a kind of commercial point. So it's good if something comes to me that is, naturally not hitting 0 or anywhere near, at least kind of -3, -5 or something, peaks. But that the average level is also not so low. If the peaks are sort of 15 dB higher than the average level, then I have to bring the average up. You end up squashing the peaks down so much that you can really change the sound and everything starts sounding a bit squashed. And if you're doing that just on the whole mix, the stereo mix as a whole, that has a very big kind of sonic difference. Whereas if you can do that in stages, then you can craft the mix a bit more carefully. You'll end up with a better result if it's done at kind of every stage of the process.
Okay, so summarizing that, don't be too quiet. Don't be too loud.
Yeah.
So -6 and -12 is good.
Yeah.
There we go. And you can send it 24 or
24
32.
32-bit float's fine.
All good.
All good, and at whatever sample rate it happens to be at.
Any other paperwork, preparation, anything else that you want?
People should definitely look into ISRCs, PPL, PRS, signing up with the bodies who do royalties.
Yeah,
things
so
like that.
To anyone who doesn't know, all those things that are things that go into the metadata of the track. So that means that it's kind of synced in, and that's the mastering engineer's job to put it in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can get those from the bodies that collect all the royalties.
Yeah, so PPL and PRS are in the UK, and I don't know what they're all called across the different countries, but if you look up ISRCs, those are what to look up for and to sign up with, because that's how royalties get distributed.
Also, if you do your self-publishing, you do get those done through example DistroKid. So you might not need to do it through the mastering engineer.
No, it doesn't currently have to be done at the point of mastering. That's fine. You can do them at the point of upload if you're uploading with someone that can.
Yeah, so if you're a self-publishing artist like me, so I usually do them at that point, in the last point.
Yeah. But the rest of it is, it's totally up to you. It's useful to know the track order. That's quite key for us. If it's a kind of EP or an album, it's really good to work on them in the correct order.
How about references?
References are useful as much for people checking masters as for me sending them. It's quite nice to know what people have been listening to, what kind of headspace they're in, or where they kind of place their music against other music, but also references for yourself so that you can check a master and then you can have an opinion on whether it's loud enough or that you know.
Cool. Awesome. Anything else they need to
I think that's everything.
Gain staging. Order.
Gain staging
Is a big thing.
Gain staging is a big one. Yeah.
People are very confused about that.
Well, it's quite a subtle concept because it's also, it depends.
Again, online, there's people saying what's right and what's wrong. Yeah. And that confuses people.
Yeah.
So it's a very good thing that you just said that whole it's kind of depends, but don't worry too much about it as long as not too quiet, too loud.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confusion about what LUFS should be, should be when, especially for streaming.
Yeah.
Is it -14? Is it -12? Tell us, what is the LUF that we should aim for?
Yeah, basically, and you're probably going to hate my answer.
It depends.
I don't aim for a specific LUFS. I might check them if I feel that that's useful to me. It's worth remembering with LUFS and the streaming kind of normalization, targets is a word that often gets used, but actually they're guidelines. So
guidelines, like that.
They're guidelines. Some of them aren't, but it's better to think of them as guidelines. All loudness comes with the sort of penalty. So bringing up a track using a limiter or whatever it is has a sonic effect. Often that sonic effect is nice, and that's fine. It kind of glues it together. That can be nice. If you then push it louder and louder and louder, you end up squashing it and sort of making it smaller and pushing the transients down and making the whole thing, that kind of sausage shape that we see plastered around and that kind of clipped sound. And the normalization guidelines mean that you don't need to go as loud as that. You don't need to risk it being so squashed in order for something to sound the right level when it's played out against other tracks, because all the tracks have been through the same process of trying to put them into the same place.
So are you saying that the normalization of those platforms is actually not that bad thing? Because a lot of people, I feel talk about it as a very negative thing.
No, it's not that bad a thing. If you remember that it's not a target, it's a guideline.
Love this.
Because it's not even a target. I don't master to -14, not least because all the streaming services are different. But what it allows me to do is to bring the level of the track up to what feels right.
Rule of thumb type of situation.
Honestly, changes, totally varies. My rules of thumb in this room are the VUs here. Most things come out probably a little bit louder than -14 LUFS. But I know roughly on this scale, for me, you know, where a loud pop track might come up. I know where a very dynamic piece of classical music that starts off with a quiet piano intro, where that's going to come up. I know where...
So you talk about the knowledge of knowing the genre and knowing how dynamics work with the genre in relative to a genre.
Exactly.
So you, again, talk more about knowledge of knowing how dynamics work. And then all this guidance is not a rule, it's a guideline.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you know. Let's try to kind of...
We'll do quicker. Some of them are quicker, some of them are not.
So,
Like, that's quite a big one.
That was a big... But that's actually something that was really requested. So I think it's really good we went through that. Should you get someone else master your tracks?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Because what, I guess I'm speaking for myself, what I'm bringing is the experience that I've had. I do mastering all day, every day. So I can bring that sort of fixed knowledge of the space, and the changing thing is that track. And so I have a concept immediately of how it sits against all the other things that I've listened to in this room. And so I can quite quickly come up with an idea of how to push it in one direction or another. And it's that kind of objectivity and it's that kind of mind space that a separate mastering engineer is bringing.
I love that because I always master my own. So I can say from this side that my perspective always is that I like continuing my own art. So
totally fair enough.
that's the reason I've been doing it, but also budget and also the fact that timescale. Do you think it's worth of using your limited budget to then having it mastered by somebody else?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course I think that because I offer that as a service. That's what I do. Of course it is. And maybe more so with mastering because relatively cheaper because it's quicker than mixing, you know.
I get from mastering that it really finalizes whatever you have, makes it perfect for the world.
Yeah.
Is that you have a t-shirt?
Yeah, we make it perfect for the world. That should be the I
it's
think
an interesting thing.
Also, what's come up with these questions, and maybe this is just a philosophical thing, but there's lots of shoulds and shouldn'ts and stuff, and like you're allowed to do what you want.
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean? Thing. Like, should I go to a mastering engineer? Well, it's like, do you want to invite someone else onto the project? Do you want to get a different perspective, or do you want to do it all yourself and not have that other? They're both
right
options.
or wrong.
Yeah. So should is a sort of
When it comes to art, there's no right or wrong.
Exactly.
So love this. Makes me think. You are mastering multiple songs. What is the best way to get all the songs same volume?
I would say use your ears. Only you, as a human being listening, can most closely match the experience of other people, other human beings also listening. So metering, using LUFS, all these kind of things are useful information to have, but they don't represent the whole of what it is to listen.
They're just tools.
They are just tools. So listening to it, because I think I mentioned it before, you know, tracks feel different according to what the track before them was or what the track after them was. And, you know, if you use something that, if you just put everything to one level, something that was like a quietly played piano shouldn't sound like it's the same volume as an entire orchestra. So use your ears and do what you feel, because you can then feel whether it's right or wrong.
I think that kind of makes what we just talked about is kind of that comes to it. It's like we need to trust our ears more and listen to what we think is right.
Yeah.
And what we feel instead of just think what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
What that person said on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
What plugin you need to use.
Yeah, so you can run them through a loudness thing and check them all, you know, if you had a whole album. But then I would encourage people to just listen, set the volume, you know, don't touch it and see what feels right.
Yeah, love that. Someone says tips for understanding low end better when talking about mastering.
For understanding low end better in one's own room, if you're not sure that your room is set up for it.
Let's talk about rooms first.
Okay, well, that's where metering can be really helpful. You know, if you feel like there's something happening in your room that you are or aren't hearing, you know, check it, get a spectrum analyzer up, see what you can hear.
Yeah.
Slowly play a sweep from your listening position, see what bits jump out and what bits don't, all that kind of stuff. Try and get as much information about your own room as you possibly can, whether that's through metering and whether that's or through listening, or ideally both.
So talk about acoustic treatment tools as well as like room treatment. How important is the room for mastering?
I mean, I think it's very important. I think it's part of what we're offering is an extremely well put together,
And this is what you're paying.
acoustically treated room.
Yeah.
Like, a flat response, good speakers, knowledge of how it all works together from someone that listens in this space a lot.
So can someone with home studio and knowing their acoustic, even using, those treatment tools or plugins, can they actually ever get into good mastering results in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I'm sure they could, if they know their room really well and they know where they're going, and if they feel that their results are good, then they're good because it's subjective.
Where and how do you listen finished masters? How do you know it's finished?
Ooh, how do I know it's finished? Is when I feel I can't add any more. When I've checked it against the mix and I feel really happy. You can feel when you're starting to unpick good work. So I try to avoid that kind of spiral. And then I send it off to the person whose music it is. And when they say they're happy with it, it's finished.
Okay.
Easy.
Someone said, I would like to hire a professional mastering engineer. And there are many people in my area that claiming to be mastering engineers. I need to put these in the right place. Are there things I can look for or ask during initial interviews that could reveal the red flags when choosing a mastering engineer?
Red flags.
Tell the red flags.
I think what's really important is that we're providing a service. So if you don't feel, as an artist, if you're an artist and you don't feel like you're being listened to, you don't feel free to say how you feel, maybe that's not ideal. Maybe that just goes for all relationships. I don't know. For mastering, it's quite good to, know what other things they've worked on, to go to someone that has worked on music that you like and you like the sound of, or worked with someone that you know. That's always a good one. But yeah, I think at its core, it's a relationship. And so I don't know about initial interviews, but you can probably feel something from someone's response, even if you're just chatting on emails.
How about more like equipment example? Do you think there's red flags? Do you think like if they can provide example pictures of their studio or...
I guess there's a little voice inside my head that's like, yeah, you should just obviously go for someone with green walls and like exactly
six
pieces of equipment. Yeah, like I don't know however much I've got here. I think is your question, if you feel like that's important to you, then that is important to you. I can't really
that's
tell
a really good
someone
answer because
that is or isn't, because it might not be.
Everything depends, doesn't it? Maybe they have a budget, but they are amazing listeners. They are amazing, like they have amazing tools and they fit really well for the genre you are wanting to. You listen to their previous work, then maybe the equipment doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're syncing with them really well.
Yeah, exactly. Then and then you shouldn't shut yourself off to that.
Yeah.
Because they don't fit some arbitrary specification that I'm going to say.
And maybe there's a lot of like, it's only right if the mastering engineer looks like this. So maybe there is some people who can do amazing stuff who don't fit that picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you need to listen to your guts?
Basically.
Is that the summary?
Listen to your gut. Always. If only we knew how to from the start.
Someone did ask, how do you get a loud master?
I think it's important to remember that perceptive loudness is a different thing to metered loudness. So, a really loud sounding song might start at the pre-production phase because it's something that's quite sparse. If there's only 4 instruments happening at any one time, each of those instruments can sound really loud. Whereas if there's 200 instruments, then they're all going to be fighting for space, and perceptively you can't make that sound as loud. There's a kind of a curve as to when compression and limiting help, and then when they start making things sound smaller. And actually every mix has a natural point that doesn't get any louder, and that is to do with the arrangement, that is to do with the mix, it's to do with the sound of the instruments, it's to do with the mastering approach.
So you need to understand loudness.
Yep.
And then you need to understand how dynamics work. Basically, you need to learn these basic concepts of audio. It's easier to understand how to make your mastering loud.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it always with audio is like, if you learn the basic concepts.
Because everything depends. And because engineering at its purest sense is about using the tools that are available to you for a creative purpose. But this is one of the tools as well, and understanding what you're hearing. And I think, we all know that the internet and the world is full of people saying, do this and this will happen. But that in no way takes into account what you're putting into the beginning of it. So there's no big secrets that are being kept, I don't think. Maybe there are.
I think there is when you're starting up, you need to start from somewhere. And I do think that some tools and some shortcuts and some rules of thumb can help you with the beginning to understand even just where to start, because it can be intimidating and you might give up before you even start it. Yeah. So that's why next video you're showing your workflow. So that's coming this coming Wednesday. And then after that, there will be 2 more videos on the same series. So I show to the ultimate beginner how to master your tracks in Ableton Live, like literally like you just started Ableton yesterday type of person. And then another video where it is more advanced person who already knows about things, how to create a mastering chain in Ableton Live that you can then utilize as a tool, part of your mastering. So subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thank you so much, Cicely Balston, for this
Thanks
interview.
for having me.
Thank you for debunking what mastering is. Come next time, Cicely will show what her process is and plugins and devices and all kind of fun stuff. Also, thank you to my Patreons. We can make a Patreon list come here. Beautiful Patreons. These are my beautiful Patreons. Go to the link down below to join the Patreon club. We have weekly live streams. We have monthly masterclasses and mentoring and feedback. Cicely is very impressed, so come and join them. Okay, thank you so much.